everybody, and happy Wednesday night. My name is Abby, and you might recognize me from some of the weekly services here at Prince of Peace. I love to sing with the worship team. Now, I grew up going to Prince of Peace with my family, attending Sunday school, and then student ministry just like all of you. But I never felt truly plugged in. I watched other small groups seem to connect more than mine, and I looked at the kids on stage and wondered how on earth they found their way into the in crowd. I was scared and I was not feeling connected to my church. I didn't really get that feeling of connection until just last year, the summer of 2019, when Swen invited me to sing for WOW. Truth be told, I had pretty low expectations. I figured I would sing one time, get it over with, and go back to feeling the same disconnect I'd felt throughout high school. To be perfectly honest, I spend most of my life trying to keep my expectations low. Not trying to be that person, but sometimes I like to live by this philosophy. The happiest and healthiest people are those whose expectations meet reality, which basically just means if you keep expectations low, you're more likely to have them met. And when that happens, you're more likely to be happy or at least not constantly disappointed. But here's the thing. There's one time of year when I find this nearly impossible: Christmas. I want to have low expectations for Christmas, but there is something about the season where I just can't do it. Every year at Christmas time, I simply want it to be the best Christmas ever. My expectations about what I want to have and what I want to feel at Christmas are always, well, over the top. Christmas has this power over me where I just want to have all the feelings, all the food, all the decorations, all the sentimental movies, all the friends, all the family, and all the stuff that the Christmas season could possibly offer. I want every Christmas, including the one we're about to celebrate, to be the best Christmas ever. The rest of the year I may be grounded in reality and low expectations, but this time of year I turn into Buddy the Elf. Maybe you feel this way too. Your family hasn't gone 5 minutes without arguing in 10 years, but at Christmas, you imagine sitting together around the Christmas tree, listening to Christmas music while sipping on hot chocolate, all smiles and warm, fuzzy feelings. Or maybe any other time of year, you're totally fine being single or just friends, but at Christmas, you daydream about your crush showing up at your doorstep with a perfectly chosen gift wrapped in a big red bow just for you. Something about Christmas makes us dream big, raise our expectations, and imagine having the best Christmas ever. But our expectations are hardly ever met at Christmas, are they? Something is bound to disappoint us, and because we expect so much, the disappointment hurts that much more. Which is why, like I said at the beginning, I try to keep expectations low. Even if you don't realize it, I bet you do the same thing I do in some areas of your life. Maybe you're a total optimist when it comes to your dating life. You're naturally friendly and fun to be around, so you're confident that your crush will like you back. Or maybe you're super confident in your athletic ability. You work hard and you fully expect to make varsity as a freshman. But when it comes to faith, I bet you, like a lot of us, find it safer to keep your expectations low. We might pray, but rarely do we think God will do exactly what we are asking for. We would say we have faith, but the truth is, we're just not sure God is going to show up and act the way we think he should. I think we all have this idea of how God and this whole faith thing works. We think God will do something for us if we're good, or he'll do something to us if we're bad. If we're good, like if we go to church, read our Bibles, and treat other people well, then we think that God will do good things for us. The more good stuff we do, the more good stuff God does for us in return. But God never seems to do exactly what we expect him to do. And when that happens over and over and over, eventually it just becomes easier to stop expecting so much. And what does it look like to lower our expectations of God? We stop praying because we believe either God can't or won't do anything. We think God is weak, and then assume he's unable to do anything big or powerful. We think God is uninterested. He doesn't know or care anything about our lives, so why bother telling him about it or expecting him to act on our behalf? We lose interest in anything faith-related because God seems so far away. We don't always do it on purpose. We usually just kind of become this way. And then if God does answer our prayer, if he does show up, if he does do what we ask him to do, great, it's a pleasant surprise. But to set out with expectations God will do all of that, big mistake. I don't know about you, but that kind of God doesn't sound like something to celebrate at Christmas. But what if we got it all wrong? What if we're missing the point and there's a better, more realistic and healthier way to see God that, if we really understood, would actually make this the best Christmas ever? Here's some comforting news. We aren't the first ones to have unmet expectations of God. In fact, the Christmas story, the story we're celebrating this month, didn't happen at all like people expected. Now, that may sound strange to say. Many of us are so familiar with the Christmas story that to imagine it being any different would be so weird. But the truth is, no way 2,000 years ago were they expecting God to come into the world the way that he did. But before we go any further, let's get a refresher on the details of the Christmas story itself. Mary, the mother of Jesus, was a young, pregnant, Jewish teenager, not yet married. She and Joseph, the man she was engaged to be married to, did not have a lot of money, and they were living in a land occupied by the Roman Empire. And at the start of the story, the Roman government had decided that they wanted to have a count of all the people that they were ruling. So every family was told to go to the town they were originally from to be counted. So Mary, who was pregnant, had to get on a donkey and make a hot and dry and miserable trip to get to the town where Joseph's family came from. Sounds awful, right? But wait, that's not all. Once they get to Bethlehem, their destination, all the hotels are full. I guess Joseph forgot to book an Airbnb on Hotels.com. And now, Mary isn't just super pregnant and tired and uncomfortable. Now she's got nowhere to sleep. And then, just because there wasn't enough going wrong already, Mary goes into labor, as in the baby is coming, here, now, far away from home with no place to stay. Now, I know things were different 2,000 years ago, but I can promise you this. It doesn't matter what culture you're from or what century you're living in. This situation is less than ideal. Actually, it stinks. It literally stinks. Because in Joseph's desperation to find a place for Mary to have this baby, the only thing he could find was a barn with barn animals and all the smells that come with those animals. And that's where they ended up. That's where Mary had her first child, away from her family, away from her home, away from anything comfortable. She and Joseph had their baby completely alone. And no one expected it. If I had been Mary or Joseph, I'm sure I would have thought, God is distant. God is mad at us. God has forgotten us. God is punishing us. God has abandoned us. God is silent. Because when God doesn't do what we think he should, or if God doesn't behave like we expect him to, then it makes sense to assume that we've done something wrong, or that God isn't what we believed him to be. Mary and Joseph and all of God's people at that time believed God was powerful and would arrive like a military leader to take their land back. They believed God was majestic. He would show up in a palace or in a wealthy family. They thought God was predictable. God would do what the people wanted if they followed the rules. He would arrive the way they expected and with the messages that they wanted to hear. But for hundreds of years before this unexpected birth, God had been silent. He hadn't spoken through any prophets. People were losing hope of ever being freed from the empire that ruled them. There was no indication God even cared about them anymore. By all appearances, God was nowhere to be found. But for all the expectations they had of God, it turned out they missed the one that mattered most. It wasn't that God had let them down, which would have made him undependable or weak or not worth following. It was that they had misunderstood who God really was and expected something completely different than who God is and always has been. And who is God? What is God like? Well, an angel showed up to tell Joseph exactly what God was going to be like when he arrived. The angel said this: "She will give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins." All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. God's people expected a warrior, a ruler, a punisher of enemies, a king, someone to take charge. And they were disappointed because their expectations did not meet reality. But the truth is, they got something far better. They got a God who was with them, not in a palace, but in a barn. They were given an accessible and a reachable God. God with them was an idea they didn't expect, but it was an idea that changed everything. God with us means no matter what, we are never alone. No matter our behavior, no matter our good days or bad days, no matter our family situation or financial status, no matter what we've done or haven't done. So, what I want you to remember is this: no matter what, God is with us. It started with Christmas, but it continues to be true because of Jesus' death on the cross, his resurrection, and his sending the Holy Spirit to be with us forever. In other words, the Spirit of God lives in us as a reminder that we are never alone. When you think of God with us, it changes everything. It means no matter your reality, God is with you in it. Maybe you aren't getting along with your friends or your family. God is with you. Or maybe you're failing geometry. God is with you. So you didn't get the part you wanted in the play? God is with you. And especially real this year, in 2020, you're scared about what is happening in the world. God is with you. In other words, you are not in this alone. You aren't left alone to figure out the confusing stuff, the annoying stuff, or the stuff you worry about. You have God with you. Jesus changed the way we see God. He gave us a new way to understand God and relate to God. In fact, in John chapter 8, verse 12, Jesus said this about himself: "I am the light of the world." Light helps you see what you can't see before, which is exactly what Jesus did for us with God. The light helps us to know what to expect from God and to more fully understand who God is. And that is good news. You might be asking, so what? God is with me. What can I do with that? I can think of 3 things you can do with that. Number 1, remember that God is with you. Start with this. For some, Christmas is really hard. It's anything but merry and bright. For others, it really is the best thing ever. Either way, it's important to know that God is with you in it. He chose to be with you. When you're bored at home in quarantine on break and the walls are closing in around you, when you're having way more fun than you expected at that virtual ugly sweater Christmas party, when you're feeling scared or disappointed, and when you're joyfully feasting on Christmas cookies, God is with you in all of those moments. And that is worth remembering. Number 2, spend time with God. In all this Christmas craziness, make time to connect with God. Read your Bible, pray, listen to Christmas music, journal, dedicate a few minutes every day to spend time with God. After all, that's why He came, to be with you. And last, number 3, spend time with other people. God created us for community. All around you, there are people who need you, people who need God. Maybe it's your family, friends, a neighbor, a classmate, or the people in your small group. Whoever it is for you, make an effort to slow down and be fully present with these people too. Here's the thing. When you know God is with you and you know He has promised never to leave, it's far more difficult to be disappointed in God, because that is a promise He will never break. Christmas is the best time to take a second look at the way we see God, ourselves, and the people around us, and to let Jesus shine a light on this amazing promise. The God of the universe came down to earth to show you that he loves you, to show you that he cares about you, and to show you that he is with you. And this Christmas, at the end of a year that feels like the craziness is never going to stop, I think that's the best news ever.